How do we conduct proper research and study? Well, in this short video, I'm going to show you how to deal with people who make egregious claims and repeat misinformation or just maybe a statement that they got wrong and it's not their fault. I'm going to pick out somebody from the 9/11 movement, false and very egregious claims that often are just outright lies or just completely wrong. And this person's name is Rebekah Roth. Now, to people who follow my channel, you've heard this name before because her name keeps popping up every once in a while. She's not active anymore, really. And this is no surprise because when you propagate old theories and you don't learn anything new because it might be contradictory to those theories, you're not going to bring anything new. So you keep repeating yourself, you get bored. Your audience gets bored of you and you're not interesting anymore. So this is a interview that Jeff Rense did with Rebekah Roth, as you can see, the date, September 2015. And this is only 15 minutes long. I chose this because it's not long at all. So let's hear what Rebekah Roth has to say. And
11 is today. We're going to talk to a young woman who has not been on this program before. She has done an extraordinary amount of research, however, and I assume she's standing by there. Rebekah, are you there?
I am, yes, I am.
Where are you? Don't have to tell me the town.
by the way, Rebekah Roth goes by many names. Monica Gaynor, Sarah, just a couple of names. And she wrote 2 books, one of them being Methodical Illusion. I forgot the other one, though.
What state are you in? What part of the country?
I'm in the western part of the United States.
Good.
Right now.
That narrowed it right down. I like that. All right. Rebekah Roth is our guest, and I've subtitled it 9/11 Whodunit. Rebekah has done some extraordinary work, and I want her just to kind of jump into that, and we'll follow along and chime in here and there and ask her to amplify and further elucidate on things. But what got you pulled into this?
I stopped flying in about 2004, and
You were
I really
a hostess.
Yes, I was. I was an international purser and a flight attendant for.
Just want to point out that she never worked for an airline industry ever. There's no evidence of this. She claims that she worked. Sometimes she names a company, but there's no record of any Rebekah or Monica Gaynor ever working in the airline industry. So right off the bat, she's not telling the truth.
About 30 years at the time of 9/11.
Wow.
I flew until about 2004, and then I never really looked back at the airline or 9/11 or anything else. I saw it unfold on television just like everyone else did.
Yeah.
And in 2008-9, somewhere in there, in my retirement, I thought, well, I'll just write that novel everyone I flew with told me I should write. So I started to write a novel just about life in the jet stream and what it was like to do what I did for a living. And I traveled and I saw lots of great places, met lots of neat people all around the world. I thought, well, this would be really kind of fun to base a novel on. And then about, I don't know, chapter 2 or 3 into my novel, I decided I'd introduce a Middle Eastern character, and I wanted to grab a name. So I Google searched 19 Arab hijackers from 9/11. And lo and behold, up in front of me came a BBC article written September 23rd, 2001. How did I miss this? 6 of the hijackers were still alive. At least 4 of them were professional airline pilots out of the Middle East. And I was just absolutely shocked.
Okay, let's stop right there because that's the first claim. So let's just say that you are new to 9/11, you came across this video, and she makes this statement. And unless you're a hobbyist, you're not writing things down. But if you're like a researcher, and you want to know more about 9/11, and she made this statement. Are you just going to believe her and take her word for it? Or are you going to do your due diligence and investigate whether what she just said is true? Now, I'm going to pull up an article that she mentioned, which is the BBC article. And it's true. On September 23rd, 2001, what does it say? Hijacked suspects alive and well. A man called Walid al-Sheri says he left the U.S. a year ago. Read carefully. Man called Walid al-Sheri. Another of the men named by the FBI as a hijacker in the suicide attacks in Washington and New York has turned up alive and well. The identities of 4 of the 19 accused of having carried out the attacks are now in doubt. Saudi Arabian pilot Walid al-Sheri was one of 5 men that the FBI said had deliberately crashed American Airlines Flight 11 into the World Trade Center on September 11th. His photograph was released and has since appeared in newspapers and on television around the world. Now he is protesting his innocence from Morocco. He told journalists there that he had nothing to do with the attacks on Washington and New York and had been in Morocco when it happened. He has contacted both the Saudi and American authorities, according to Saudi press reports. He acknowledges that he attended flight training school at Daytona Beach in the United States and is indeed the same Walid al-Sheri to whom the FBI had been referring. But he says he left the United States in September last year, became a pilot with Saudi Arabian Airlines, and is currently on a further training course in Morocco. Pretty startling revelation, would you say? That a man named Walid al-Sheri is actually one of the hijackers that is still alive. But there's a problem here, because one thing that Rebekah Roth and usually certain people get wrong are Arab names. Now, Arab names are similar to their parents' names, their lineage, but basically what happens here is that the Walid al-Sheri that was part of the 9/11 attacks is not the same Walid al-Sheri that's named in the BBC article and named by Rebekah Roth, because there's a slight discrepancy in the name itself. And this is totally understandable. And let me pull up what the Walid al-Sheri at the BBC article was referring to. This man, Walid Ahmed al-Sheri, different than Walid al-Sheri, who had a brother, Wael al-Sheri. Walid was on Flight 175. And as you can see, they don't look anywhere the same. This is the Walid al-Sheri, who is a pilot in Morocco. And this is Walid al-Sheri, one of the hijackers for 9/11. So you would think that Rebekah Roth would point out this discrepancy. But no, she didn't. She ignored it, or she doesn't know about this at all. Nevertheless, it is your duty to basically get everything right, or at least try, and be honest in your reporting. If you're going to make an egregious claim, a remarkable statement that the hijackers are alive, then that means that you have to bring extraordinary evidence. And as you could see, here's one example where she's wrong. Now, a couple years after that article, the BBC in 2006 wrote an article based on the original article, and they mentioned the problem. And as you can see here, 9/11 Conspiracy Theory by Steve Herman, October 27th, 2006. 5-year-old story from our archive has been the subject of some recent editorial discussion here. The story, written in the immediate aftermath of the attacks, was about confusion at the time surrounding the names and identities of some of the hijackers. The confusion was widely reported and also acknowledged by the FBI. Now, Rebekah Roth did this interview in 2015. This article has been around since 2006. That's 9 years. So she had 9 years to get this right, and she didn't. We later reported on the list of hijackers, thereby superseding the earlier report. In the intervening years, we have also reported in detail on the investigation into the attacks, the 9/11 Commission, and its report. In an effort to make this clearer, we have made one small change to the original story. Under the FBI picture of Walid al-Shadi, we have added the words "a man called Walid al-Shadi" to make it as clear as possible that there was confusion over the identity. The rest of the story remains as it was in the archive as a record of the situation at the time, because as the years go by and they got more information, they corrected their initial report. Did Rebekah Roth correct her mistake? No. So, and that's not all. There are other reports regarding another hijacker that she refers to as well. And it's Abdulaziz al-Omari. So if we go back to the article from the BBC, you'll see that the same mistake happens here. Abdulaziz al-Omari, another of the Flight 11 hijack suspects, has been quoted in Arab news reports. He says he is an engineer with Saudi telecoms and that he lost his passport while studying in Denver. Another man with exactly the same name surfaced on the pages of the English language Arab news. The second Abdulaziz al-Omari is a pilot for Saudi Arabian Airlines. That's the one that Rebekah Roth is referring to. But wait a minute. Here's Abdulaziz al-Omari, who lost his passport in Denver. Let's see if it's the same Abdulaziz al-Omari that was part of the 9/11 attacks, right? So why don't we share the screen? Much like Walid al-Shadi, as you can see, here is Abdulaziz al-Omari. He was part of the hijacking team of American Airlines Flight 11. And here is Rebekah Roth's Abdul Rahman al-Omari. Here's Abdulaziz al-Omari, lost his passport in Denver. And as you could see, discrepancy in the name. Abdul Rahman al-Omari, the pilot, Saudi Arabia, that Rebekah Roth refers to and claims that it's the hijacker. No, this is the hijacker. This is the pilot. As you could see, he's alive. He's dead. It took seconds. Now, if you're a researcher and you came across this information from Rebekah Roth and you got this information, you're probably wondering, well, what else could she get wrong? Why don't we find out?
Aren't there more still alive? I think
There's actually 10.
10, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That I can see how that knocked you over.
And it's
sure.
not even and by the way, the BBC article says it's 4 with similar names, not 10. So she even got that wrong.
It sure did. And I was so shocked. And then I read a little bit about these, hijackers still alive. I started Googling.
No, she didn't. She only looked at information that agreed with her theories. Because, like I said, that article, the contracting article, came out in 2006. That means she had 9 years to know about that article. Either she intentionally didn't look for that information, or she knew about that article and dismissed it because she's trying to propagate a theory which is false. And if you're a researcher that's just starting out and you're listening to this, you're like, no, Rebekah, no, that's not true. You know, these are people with similar names, and that these people are alive. They're not part of the 9/11 attacks, obviously. And they are also different in facial features.
Started looking, and then I started discovering other things. I set that novel aside and did thousands of hours of research into 9/11 because I have to honestly tell you.
Look, thousands of hours, right? Thousands. Is that even true? If she spent thousands of hours online looking at stuff, what kind of stuff was she looking at? Information that agrees with her worldviews and theories? Or did she look at a lot of information that contrasted her theories and she neglected to make those corrections? Those are the only two options that are plausible here. And then now, if you're just starting out and you basically opine your thoughts and run those two options in your head, you're wondering whether this person is legitimate or acting in good faith. But at this point, you want to know what else she got right or what else she got wrong.
Even though I never looked,
people can make mistakes, right?
Back, and I couldn't really go there mentally.
Right.
I knew from day one that cell phone calls cannot be made from altitude. And when I started hearing that, and I started hearing that the flight attendants themselves were making cell phone calls, reservations, and different family, I knew that was wrong. It's not protocol. And can't happen.
Well, that's wrong. There were only 4 cell phone calls made, and I think there were 11 on Flight 93. 4 were made on the total of 175, 11, and 11, 175, and 77. And I think it was 11 on 93. A lot of those dropped off. 2 were successful. No, 3 were successful. C.C. Lyles, Mark Bingham, and Edward Felt. If I'm missing a name, please comment. But most of the phone calls were CPAC phones. Flight attendant that used a cell phone was C.C. Lyles. It's not breaking protocol. In fact, that's not even part of the protocol manuals in 2000. And what happens is during a hijacking is that the flight attendant, usually a woman, accosts the male hijacker, because hijacker is usually male. And what they explain is that there's a Massport document, Massport, Massachusetts, right, which talks about the hijacking protocol for flight attendants, pursers, and pilots. And what they train is that for a flight attendant woman to become the person that talks with the hijacker, because a man will not see the woman as a threat and will not do any harm, or be less guarded and less aggressive, which destabilizes the situation a bit. And that's proper protocol. But she never mentions this.
Happen. And then I saw and heard so many things that were wrong that I just put my brain on don't go there. Look, I'm not going to go there, because I flew for a few years after that. And listen, when you're flying, your safety net is NORAD and the U.S. military. And I've had jets scrambled for me before for different incidences over my career. And
And, that's basically false because they won't intervene on your behalf. You're an alleged person, right? They'll intervene on the behalf of the pilots and the first officer who has to call control center. Control center then calls FAA. FAA then calls, an air base, whether it's Andrews or Otis. There's procedures to this. You don't just make a call and basically say, I need air defense. It doesn't work like this. There's a chain of command that goes along with getting defense jets up in the sky. So I don't know. And anybody who's willing to do their due diligence, and this is not hard. You could look up the protocols for hijackings and the protocols for how to get NORAD to intervene in a situation in the air. So very easy. And right now at this point, you're probably saying to yourself, wow, I don't know who this person is. She claims to be a flight attendant, yet when I look up her name, there's no employment history. She doesn't tell you what airline she works for. It's not her real name. So far, she's gotten a couple of things wrong, and you're just scratching your head whether you want to take this person at face value anymore. But like I said, people make mistakes. So let's keep going.
Come to your wingtips, and it's very frightening because sometimes you can see their armament hanging from them, and they'll maybe shoot you down. You just don't know, but the feeling is horrible, except they do scramble and come to your rescue in 6 minutes.
Yeah. If you're somewhere in the Midwest and they don't have anybody nearby, it could take far longer than that. But no, they don't just shoot down planes for any reason, right? There's a protocol for that too. It's a military chain of command, and it goes like this: President, Secretary of Defense, NORAD. The Vice President is not part of the military chain of command. And basically, this information has to come from FAA. FAA and NORAD jointly worked together. On 9/11, they basically didn't. So this like rather cavalier attitude about Rebekah Roth in regards to a shoot down or planes will just come at my command. No, I don't know where she gets this idea from. It doesn't work like that at all.
On that day, it took almost 2 hours. And after
Whoops, something wrong there. Yeah.
I was like, well, my first question was, when somebody called me and said, turn your television on right now, and I'd just gotten home from Europe, and I'd come in as purser, so I hadn't seen any FAA warnings about hijackers or anything, or Al-Qaeda, and we'd never been told about Osama bin Laden.
So we have a claim, right? I've heard this before. So she claims Osama bin Laden is Tim Osman. Now, this comes from one piece of paper that has no heading. It's completely scribbled and redacted. And it talks about Osama bin Laden being Tim Osman. But you don't know where the paper originated. There's no other name to it. There's nothing. It could have been made anywhere, right? And by the way, Osama bin Laden never worked for the CIA. He never worked even directly for the agency at any point in his life. In fact, the second emir to Al-Qaeda, Dr. Ayman al-Zawahiri, wrote a manuscript called Knights Under the Prophet's Banner, where he addresses the conspiracies attributed to bin Laden and basically says it originates from the United States. Here's Rebekah Roth repeating these theories that Dr. Ayman al-Zawahiri basically is suggesting is coming from the United States government. Now, I'm not saying Rebekah Roth works for the United States government, but she basically is repeating these theories that Al-Qaeda thinks originates from the government.
Tim
Or-
Osman, yes.
Or I later on found out he was a CIA asset in the
Yeah.
mid-'80s.
No, right? Maybe an unwitting asset. He was never an asset directly. In other words, the CIA had an operation called Operation Cyclone, where they were pumping millions and millions of dollars, hundreds of millions, through the Pakistan ISI. The ISI would then give those funds and military training to Afghan and Arab Mujahideen fighters. Just so happens that a couple of those Arab Mujahideen fighters would later be guided under bin Laden later in the Sudan, Khartoum specifically, and later Afghanistan, and this would be called Al-Qaeda. That doesn't mean that bin Laden and Al-Qaeda were trained by the CIA directly. They weren't. Maybe some of that money went to bin Laden through the Afghan Services Bureau called the Maktab al-Khidmat, which was a recruitment office in Pakistan that received Arab Mujahideen from around the world. Okay. It's a big difference. There's a lot, to go there, but Roth won't explain further about this. She just wants to just blame bin Laden to being Tim Osman, a CIA agent. Notice how there's no evidence to suggest for this. So now you're a researcher, just starting out. You found out she's wrong about the live-in hijackers. Then you go online and you see that Tim Osman claim is only existing in these very fringe and very radical conspiracy sites that have no evidence to link to where they got the information from, besides that one document, right? That has no heading, no header, no nothing on it, besides that bin Laden is Tim Osman on it. So now you're like, at this point, all right, man, should I even listen further? But you're interested because, even though you're told not to look into the sun because it's damaging to the eyes, you keep looking into the sun because curiosity is really what drives you at this point.
To start up the Mujahideen for the CIA. And so I didn't know about him or Osama bin Laden or Al-Qaeda. They had never told us or warned us that this could be possible, a hijacking group. Mm-hmm. And
okay. That's wrong too. In the years 1999, 2000, there were warnings that Al-Qaeda was planning to attack inside the United States. There's even a presidential daily briefing on August 6th of 2001 that you could find online and just type in August 6th PDB. Bin Laden determined to strike inside the United States. Information gleaned from an Al-Qaeda terrorist named Ahmed Wassam, who was part of the Millennium bombing plot. He was to drive a truck with bombs and then bomb LAX International Airport in Los Angeles. But this was an international plot, and that was just part of it. But bin Laden made it clear that he was going to attack the United States. The real conspiracy is that this wasn't hidden. It was known since 99, 98, 99, in which the CIA even drafted a report that they were at war with Al-Qaeda and that they were drafting a plan called the Plan, how original, for how to attack bin Laden and Al-Qaeda. So Roth is wrong here that the FAA was not warned of Al-Qaeda. They were.
Shocked. I saw that second plane go into the South Tower like a hot knife through butter. And honestly, I thought it was either trick photography or a new rendition of War of the Worlds.
Wow.
I thought it was somebody was joking because planes cannot disappear into a steel building.
plane actually didn't disappear into the building. It exploded upon impact. And that explosion carried through force and energy out to the other side, in which you saw the resulting fireball. Plane didn't go through the building. Now just imagine making this statement that a plane, mostly aluminum, is going to basically survive the initial impact, in which it's carrying 38,000 pounds of jet fuel. That somehow the nose, the fuselage, is going to survive. What actually did make it on the other side was one of the engines that were found on Vesey Street that you could find by using Google search image. And there's some videos that could show, and including the Scott Myers video, which I think is the best video of 175 crashing against the South Tower, you can actually see the engine shoot out on the other side of the building. Right out, shoots right out. So the plane didn't go through the building. The explosion did. The combustion energy.
Are made of aluminum. And if you've ever seen an aircraft that's been in a real major hailstorm or hit by a large bird, they do a lot of damage. Those planes are very fragile. I've seen them.
So fragile that basically she's claiming it went through the other side when it didn't.
Take a bird strike and a lightning strike and see what happens. So I really thought it was some kind of trick photography, and I really had jet lag and I didn't know what was going on.
Trick photography, meaning holograms, CGI, right? So now she's making a claim that all the amateur video, including the live media video from all around the world, Japan, Germany, France, all the media, all at once, were projecting hologram and CGI onto their screens at the same time, down to the very second. So you're a researcher. You made it this far. And now she's making these statements, which are basically really outrageous at this point. And you do your due diligence. Can holograms be inserted in live video in 2001? When you find out that's impossible, you're basically at this point wondering that, could I take this person seriously? And I'm only talking to people who are, not knowledgeable of 9/11, just wants to research or, do a slight study about what took place that day. And you run into this video of hers and Jeff Rense. And you basically research the points that she's making. And everything I'm telling you is basically information that you could get on your own. Same information. Nothing she says is actually validated. So far, the most egregious points that she makes have been shown to be wrong. Let's keep going.
And the person on the other end of the phone saying, it's terrorists. And I'm like, well, later on that day, I said, well, how did they get control of NORAD? How did they control our military? That was my main question, is so how could somebody on a...
Why would the terrorists control NORAD? Why would they control the military? If you're saying that NORAD should have intercepted these planes, well, now we got something we could talk about. I agree. NORAD should have intercepted these planes. Why didn't they? Let's keep going.
The laptop and a satellite phone stopped NORAD from scrambling. And
for how many hours?
Well, they were an hour and 45 minutes, I believe.
My goodness.
Close to New York.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting what happened.
Well,
Actually, that's not true. NORAD was Otis Air Force Base got to New York about 7 minutes after 175 crashed into South Tower. So they were right behind them. I think it was Otis. I'd be wrong about the Air Force Base, but they just missed them by 7 minutes or 5 minutes, something like that. But remember, those planes are going 600, 700 miles an hour, 200, 300 miles more an hour than the planes nearing their impact to the buildings. So they were basically getting information from the FAA. The FAA is basically fumbling information from these hijacked planes and not getting the proper protocol to getting through the main NORAD center in Cheyenne Mountain in Colorado.
and then we get the story about, who was it? Leon Panetta? I can't remember now. About Dick Cheney being told.
Yeah, that was Norman Mineta.
Norman Mineta, not Leon Panetta.
Yes, he was kind of like they could be a part of the same song.
Mm-hmm.
He was actually in the bunker with Vice President Dick Cheney, because a young soldier would come in and say to the Vice President, the aircraft is 20 miles out, sir.
He'd give him mileage checks. Yeah.
Yeah. And
by the way, this poses a conundrum to Rebekah Roth because she made the initial claim just a couple of minutes ago that the planes are holograms. So now she's referring to this story about Flight 77 nearing Arlington. That's where the Pentagon is. The story goes that there's a naval aide. His name is Douglas Cochran. She wouldn't know that because she doesn't do her due diligence. Douglas Cochran goes into the Presidential Emergency Command Bunker, PEOC, and basically says, sir, the plane is 50 miles out. Dick Cheney's on the phone. He's on the phone with other people in the command structure. Emergency operations. He's on the phone with, I don't know who, could be a group phone full. Guy comes back, Cochran. Sir, the plane is 40 miles out. And then when he comes out to, sir, the plane is 10 miles out. Do the orders still stand? And Cheney turns around and says, of course the orders still stand. Have you heard anything to the contrary? So what is Cheney really talking about? Is he talking about a shoot down order? But like I said, he can't order a shoot down. He's not part of the military chain of command. That's a stand down order. Now, can I prove that? Not really. I don't have anything in written form, and Cheney's certainly not going to admit it. But it can't be a shoot down order because that would be breaking the military chain of command. That would mean that Cheney's running the government. Bush doesn't order a shoot down order until 10:36 a.m. But by that time, all the planes have crashed. So where is he getting this shoot down authority from if it's a shoot down order? That's why I think it's a stand down order.
so he said the airplane is 5 miles out, so do your orders still stand? And Norman Mineta, he's on record saying this. I believe he said it at the 9/11 Commission hearings, I think. And, or before that, I don't know. He's certainly on record just saying that. It's very well known. And Dick Cheney said, have my orders still stand? Have I changed? No, my orders still stand, as if he knew what was about to happen. And shortly thereafter, just a moment, something hit the Pentagon. And so
That's something that's like over 100 people actually. I think it's 36 or 42 people saw on the plane American Airlines. Not only that, the plane debris that was noticeable on the lawn, in the parking lot, inside the Pentagon, plane debris belonging to Flight 77. They recovered the human remains thanks to Dover Mortuary and the search and rescue teams at Fort Belvoir and Montgomery counties, as well as the FBI. as well as Arlington Fire Department, Fort Myer Fire Department, Fort Belvoir Fire Department, Ronald Reagan Fire Department, Ronald Reagan Airport Fire Department, and a dozen other companies that were involved with the cleanup and search and rescue. They found the flight data damage. They found parts of the landing gear near A&E Drive, which is the parking lot inside the Pentagon. And, of course, pieces of the fuselage. And, of course, parts of the turbofan belonging to the engines of Flight 77. So they did find plane debris. People did see the plane. Radar from Dulles Airport and Indianapolis Control Center saw the plane. So we have physical evidence, eyewitness evidence, and technical evidence, analytical evidence. A Flight 77 taken off out of Dulles, crashing into the Pentagon. But you're a researcher, and you find out all this, and now at this point, you're probably saying, I'm not going to be following this person. She's more wrong than she's right. And you would be right. But let's keep going.
Found in looking for my second book, because I've just released the second book, Methodical Deception, is I followed up with people like Norman Mineta. And
very good.
From the FAA.
Yeah.
And I know I'm going to send you these books as soon as I want to send you hardbacks, and I think they'll
thank you.
come in on Wednesday for the new book.
I appreciate that. The first book is Methodical Illusion. And the second book is
Methodical Deception.
Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah. And so what I did was I followed up with people that I think should have lost their jobs that day and found where they went and where they're sitting on, what board of directors they're sitting on.
Yeah. They got rewarded. They got, the big prize. Yeah.
Yeah. Really big prize. And you know, it's interesting talking about Norman Mineta. You know, if you listen to the official story of 9/11,
you're right. A rapper would love those two guys in a song.
They would. And if you listen to the official story, they claim there was a gun on board. There was bombs on some of the aircraft, knives and box cutters, and pepper spray and mace.
All this wouldn't matter, right? Because you don't believe in actual planes. You basically said that the planes were holograms. You don't even believe a plane hit the Pentagon. So this point about weapons, which she's right, by the way, this actually leads into a very important anomaly. Weapons found on planes, like a gun on American Airlines 11. In fact, American Airlines 11 had a draft report where basically the person writing that report stated that they got information from inside the plane on Flight 11 that somebody was shot in first class. Later on, Jane Garvey, the acting director, I think, of American Airlines, or the regional director, basically said under oath at the 9/11 Commission that report was false. But they also reported a gun on American Airlines 77. There was reports of knives on Flight 93 and 77. Not box cutters, knives. Later on, other planes found with weapons on them, and this was reported by CNN. All you have to do is Google weapons found on other planes, 9/11. But you're a researcher, and you basically find that Rebekah Roth is not even making her own sense on her own claims. She's talking about weapons on planes, but she don't believe in planes. So what good are the weapons found?
Those were all illegal to bring on board an aircraft at the time of 9/11. And so you have to look at who was running security. And these are the things that I looked at in every single detail. on 9/11.
Well,
And
unfortunately, we know now who was. So tell us who was running the security.
yeah, this is very interesting. There was a company started out of Israel called ICTS International, and they had a subsidiary in the United States called Huntley USA. And I remember seeing ICTS and Huntley USA almost everywhere I went. Because that was before
That's really so they penetrated the entire aeronautical business industry and got into practically every airport.
Exactly. But what's really
That's not true, actually. They didn't. They're pretty regional. But so far, this is the only thing she got right. Is that this company is based out of Israel, and they do personnel security. They do actually what they do is they go to airports and they offer their businesses. So they're consultants, but they'll do personnel security as well. And they did personnel security at Logan Airport. They were the screeners at Logan, but they were not the screeners at Dulles or at Newark. And let's talk about this because this is important. This goes to the story of who is doing security screening at Dulles and Newark. And the screening process. Now, look, she talks about security at airports, but what type of security? You have visual camera security. You have on-site personnel security, baggage security, ramp security, screener security. But she's not being specific here. So she's implying security in general. That means the entire apparatus. And that would be wrong because ICTS doesn't do all those things for every single part of every single airline in the United States. But I digress. Let's continue.
weird is the company ICTS was started by an Israeli convict who had been convicted of making fraudulent documents, campaign finance problems, and 2 or 3 other things. He actually was in prison. And so he gave the company control to somebody else in Israel, and they brought that company to the United States as Huntley USA. And for some reason, United and American both signed up with them. They controlled almost all of their security. And almost every other airport in the United States did. But what's really weird, Huntley or ICTS International runs security all over the EU. They ran security when Richard Reed, the tennis shoe bomber, came through Charles de Gaulle.
Yeah.
They ran security also through Amsterdam Schiphol Airport when the panty bomber that almost took Northwest Airlines down going into Detroit on a Christmas morning. They ran that security. They ran security at Boston Logan, at Dulles International, Washington, D.C., and Newark.
Okay. This is where she runs into trouble again. So, again, she's claiming that ICTS does all the security at every single airport in the United States. And again, that's not true because what I'm going to share with you is an article that talks about who is doing security screening at Dulles and Newark, and that is Oregon Bright Security. Businessman tarnished by 9/11 has rebuilt his company and life. Tragedy of September 11 hit the hearts and pocketbooks of millions. And you know what? Let me just load us up a little bit so you can read it too. The namesake of Oregon Bright Security, the company responsible for much of the U.S. airport security prior to the disaster. I'll repeat. The namesake of Oregon Bright Security, the company responsible for much of the U.S. airport security prior to the disaster, not Huntley, not ICTS, Argenbright. But you would know this if you actually did your due diligence. And like I said before, you're a researcher. You're going to find out this claim of who did security screening, meaning who goes through the metal detectors and the wand, and you'll find out that it's Algebrite security. So now you're like, at this point, my goodness, is there anything that she got right at this point besides the ICTS part? Because at this point, you probably lost all faith in having this person as an authority for 9/11, and I wouldn't blame you.
On 9/11. So you think, okay, now how did they get bombs and knives and all of that stuff through? So at 3 airports, now we know of 5 actually, where supposed terrorists with bombs had allowed through Huntley. Guess who's sitting on their board of directors right now? The Secretary of Transportation, Norman Mineta.
By the way, need I remind you, she basically says that no plane hit the Pentagon. You've heard her say that the planes at the World Trade Center are computer generated. Now, what does this mean? This means that this part about weapons being found on planes planted there by an Israeli-owned company, ICTS, well, that link is lost. Because if those planes with the weapons on them are the planes that are hijacked and crashed into the Pentagon World Trade Center, well, she's saying that's not true because she doesn't believe that these hijacked planes crashed anywhere on 9/11. So she loses this link. And she, when you're basically telling a lie, you better have a good memory, because what happens is that you can't keep track of the lies that you're telling, and somehow you're going to contradict your own theories. In this case, that's exactly what's happening here. Now, is she lying? I don't know. Is she misinforming on purpose? I don't know. Is she basically doing this wittingly because she works for the CIA or some government contractor? I don't know. But one thing that we do know is that if you research her points, you'll easily find out that most everything she's saying is wrong. It's not accurate. The motivations as to why it's wrong, we can debate.
Oh, no.
Think about this. In reality, they failed to stop the shoe bomber, the underwear bomber, and everything that happened on 9/11. But one thing I did discover is there were not 19 Arabs on the real passenger manifest. That's a story that's generated just by the FBI as part of the cover-up of what really did take place.
Well, that's interesting. Now, if you haven't lost interest, you're brand new, you research, you haven't lost interest in what, and you keep going, and you reach to this point. So now you go online, and you want to see those names really weren't on the flight manifests. Remember, she's doing this since 2015, right? So here's the flight manifest for, as you can see, Boston, Logan, right? This is the flight manifest for 175. I'm sorry, this is for 11. Okay, so you have Ahmed. Here's Al Ghamdi, the Al Ghamdi brothers, the Al Shedi brothers. Right here. This is the flight manifest. Document contains sensitive security information. Okay. So, I mean, this is one flight manifest, right? And I'm sorry, that's 175. That's 175. Let's go to flight 11. Okay. Passenger name list, flight 11, step 11. Satam al-Sistami. Whale al-Shadi. I'll even blow it up more for you. Oops, sorry. Here's the al-Shadi brothers, Whale and Walid al-Shadi. I don't have the second page. Flight 11, okay? Flight 77 manifest. Nawaf al-Hazmi, Salim al-Hazmi, Khalid al-Bidar, Hani Hanjur, Majid Makid. So, how about that? That's flight 77. Do we have flight 93? Yes, we do. Al-Ghamdi, Saeed Al-Ghamdi, Ahmed Al-Hasnawi. I'll blow it up more for you. Here's Saeed Al-Ghamdi, Ahmed Al-Hasnawi, Ahmed Al-Nami, Ziad Jarrah. I showed you all 4 flight manifests that you could find online. It took seconds to do this. All you have to do is Google flight manifests 9/11. Comes right up. She would know this if she actually was honest in her reporting. But as you can see, either she didn't look for it on purpose, so it contradicts her views and her theories, or she intentionally didn't look for it because she's propagating misinformation. But the question is why she's doing it. So you're at this point, you've given up, right? But there's some of you out there that wants to keep going.
Wow, Rebekah. Wow. What a journey you've been on.
Wow.
What you have seen. You know too much. It's in your books. I'm very happy about that. I hope that they do very well. It's time that we get the truth of this out. The words, the terms, inside job, really don't even come close to the dynamics involved in this tragedy. It was huge.
Mm-hmm.
We were sold out by our own. Will you tell us?
Well, that's true. And what happened to me was I immediately, once I started to see the hijackers were alive, I found an FBI document was a transcript of the 2 flight attendants from Flight 11. They were the first 2 people to call and to contact anyone that they were being hijacked or something was wrong. So it was very fortunate because I just put my flight attendant shoes back on and said, okay, I'm going in there with them. And I listened to every word. And Betty Ong called reservations, which is a line no flight attendant would call because you're on hold, just like you guys are, just like passengers, 10, 15
Sure.
minutes on hold. And if you're calling in a real emergency like a hijacking, you can't be on the phone for a long period of time because if a real hijacker saw you on the phone, they'd probably
You're
kill you.
toast. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's not true. One, they told me because unbeknownst to them, who cares what they call? We're crashing a plane. All right, that's one. And two, no protocols broken. They're calling reservations. Command center. That's exactly who you call. Go to my WordPress, type in Massport, and you'll see the training manual come up. And they talk about the hijacking protocols. Nothing she's saying even resonates even where her alleged employment.
So that was not part of the protocol, was to make phone calls outside. But we had 2 flight attendants that did that. One used a cell phone and one used an onboard phone. And Betty Ong called reservations, and she said one hijacker, as a he, has sprayed pepper spray or mace in business class, and we can't breathe in business class. And I read that again, and I thought, wait a minute. Now, what went through my 30 years career in my mind? Leaving Honolulu with that cheap perfume, that flowery stuff they'd spraying, and the whole airplane would fill up with it. Somebody sprayed it, everybody smelled like puka flowers or something. Or dropping duty-free rum somewhere in the airplane, everyone would smell it. And I thought to myself, wait a minute, if this airplane were pressurized at altitude and someone sprayed something as bad as pepper spray or mace, both of which are not legal,
Go through the whole plane,
including the hijackers.
Now, imagine that she's implying that the entire plane would be affected by a stream of mace, which is ridiculous. You're not familiar with mace. Mace, small can, stream of liquid comes out, hits you in the eyes or in the face, burns. Now, depending on what type of mace it was, it's not a bad burn, but it does disorient you from seeing where, a person who's going to attack you before they kill you, which is what they did to the pilots. It doesn't leak the whole plane. Considering that she made this call in the back of the plane.
Would be suffering from it. And yet both of those flight attendants were on the phone for 27 minutes. Neither of them ever coughed, choked, gagged, or...
It's not true either. Betty Ong was on the phone for a long time. Sandra Bradshaw wasn't. I think her calls lasted 2-3 minutes. So I don't know where this 27-minute came.
said, my eyes are killing me. I can't breathe. I'm having trouble. They didn't, you see what they said? There was gas only up in one section. And they talked on the phone for nearly a half an hour. And so she said something else. She said he stood upstairs. And now to somebody else.
She never said this. And Rebekah Roth continually uses this. He's upstairs. Or she never says this. At any point, and the transcript is available online. You can read the transcript, Betty Ong transcript. No point does she say he's upstairs. She knows this. But why is she saying it?
That means nothing, but I know there are only stairs on a 747. She was on a 767.
No
and
stairs.
Since they were not pressurized and she was calling, they were on the ground somewhere in a hang, and there are stairs in every corner.
So now you're trying, if you last this long, bless your heart and your patience, right? So you basically go and try to find information that now she's suggesting that the hijacked planes were landed somewhere in a plane hangar and they were forced to make these phone calls. So you're trying to find information about this. And what do you come up with? Zero. There is no evidence to suggest this, any of this, at all. So basically, you're left with a nothing burger. But still, you still give her a chance. What else did she say?
Of a hangar. And so what I did was I thought, well, then 20 minutes from Boston, let me find where they could be. And I knew that those aircraft, because they were heavy, we landed where they were full of fuel to go from coast to coast. Even though the loads were light, they're still landing what we call heavy in the industry. They needed at least a 10,000-foot runway, and lo and behold, if I didn't find a reserve Air Force base, within 18 minutes of Boston, and
perfect.
4 aircraft were taken over remotely using the flight termination system, which was sold to the airlines, to Boeing first from a company called SPC Corp.
Let's talk about that. So Boeing uninterruptible autopilot wasn't purchased. The rights wasn't purchased until 2006. So I don't know where she's getting this information from, because that's false, straight up false. You could look it up. Boeing uninterruptible autopilot system was bought. The rights to it was bought by Boeing in 2006. And it's still not implemented in any plane in the country. Technology exists, but it wasn't implemented in commercial planes. Now she's asserting that these planes, hijacked planes, were taken over remotely. So you do your due diligence and try to find evidence somewhere, documented evidence, show that these planes were remotely guided. And you come up with nothing. Zero. The claim, often repeated by Roth, is repeated by others who follow her. That's where you'll find it. But it leads to nowhere, because you're trying to find actual information, evidence that shows the planes were controlled remotely. But there is none. Speculation.
Another Israeli company.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's it. That's the end, right? Amazing. But what I really wanted to do is basically make this video for those who are basically just getting on board, just wanting to find out more about 9/11, and how do you discern fact from fiction, that which is true from that which is false. And you do it with great care. You don't just watch a whole hour-long, 2-hour-long presentation or interview and take the person at face value. You only do that if you want to hear things that are agreeable to you. Like if you don't believe in hijacked planes, you're not going to listen to people who worked at the airlines who saw the hijackers get on the planes and gave them their boarding passes. You're going to dismiss the phone calls. But you're going to listen to people like Barbara Honegger, because she'll basically say that the planes are holograms, that the phone calls were made on the ground, maybe the phone calls were faked, voice morphing, all this. But if you're basically just starting out, then this is the video for you, because what I'm trying to do is to teach you, or responsibly, give you advice, good advice, to basically take each point that they make and then basically either write it down or look it up at that very moment and see for yourself whether that information is validated with evidence and information, or it's basically either speculation or just outright wrong. And you might hear from other people that agree with her only. So I'm hoping that this video was educational or helpful for you, for those who are just starting out with 9/11. I can refer to you to, a very small group of people that I would consider authorities on the subject. People like Paul Thompson, or Kevin Fenton, John Gold, Robbie Martin, Ray Nolashilsky and John Duffy, DJ Thermal Detonator, Sean Russell, Darren Harvey, Ben and Eric, the podcast for New American Century, Brian Dawson, Ali Soufan. Very few, unfortunately. So those are the people that I would submit as people you could trust with information pertaining to the events of September 11, 2001. So I'll leave you off with that. Thank you very much for watching, and see you in the next video. Take care.